Now, despite bringing in Erling Haaland and captaining him in game week 36, I've still ended up on a green arrow. I've scored 70 points and I'm up to 21k overall. And here are my transfer plans for game week 37. Alright, so we'll start off the video then by talking about how my team has gotten on in game week 36 so far. So like I said, 70 points and I'm up to 21k overall. And I'm, in some ways, largely thankful for my defence for doing that. Areola with an 8-point clean sheet, some bonus points as well in that 2-0 win over Man United. I was really worried about Jarrod Bowen in that game, but as you can see there, my other midfielders managed to make up some of the points. So I was pretty pleased with how they got on. We'll talk about them in a second though. Defence, Guardiola, Ruben Diaz, obviously with their clean sheet against Southampton. Of course, disappointing that Man City couldn't score. And yeah, that obviously leaves Haaland on a blank, who had one shot in the entire game. I will just talk about Haaland now before we get on to the strikers. Yes, the decision didn't pay off. And I knew what I was getting into when I picked him, right? First game back from injury, you know, with the FA Cup final coming up. It was Pep, I think, deciding to give him minutes, you know, with that FA Cup final coming up. And of course, in game week 37, I'm at a little bit of a risk, I think, that he doesn't play because he'll get obviously good minutes in the cup final. But I had the opportunity, well, I had Marmoush in my team as well, and I just didn't fancy Salah. And had I gone through that situation all over again, I think I make the same decision all over again. I didn't fancy Salah, and also Marmoush was benched. So I thought, well, it was a prime opportunity. Sell Salah for Kevin Schade, who you can see there scored a goal, and then bring in Haaland for Marmoush, who was on the bench. Haaland was obviously playing, Marmoush on the bench. Yeah, given those circumstances all over again, I think I'd make the same move, which to me says that it's not necessarily a bad decision. It's more of a bad outcome. I was, though, a little bit nervous about seeing Salah against Arsenal because while my gut feel was that he wouldn't really do much, seeing them go 2-0 up in the first half, I was quite worried, and also quite lucky that Salah didn't get any involvements in them. So yeah, anyway, we'll move on to the other defender now. We've got Munoz. I'm moving all around the team, aren't I? Munoz with an assist and a clean sheet. What a legend he has been for my team this season. I do wonder what price he will come in at next season because, well, I don't see a way in that a Crystal Palace defender is more than like 5.5 million. And I still think even at that price, he'll prove to be good value. So yeah, I think he'll be one of the most popular defenders in the game next season, as will probably be Guardiola. Midfield, we got Ismaila Sarr, Rodgers and Mbeumo, all three of them with an assist. And by the looks of it, clean sheet points. And Schade with a goal, obviously off the Mbeumo corner. I'm pretty pleased I went for Schade. I knew what I was getting into. He didn't play the full 90. I think he got sort of 70-ish minutes. But, you know, the guy who's been really prolific of recent, who's playing a promoted team. A lot of people going Wissa. I felt I needed, because I was going for Haaland, I felt I needed a little bit more cover on the Brentford attack. And it's obviously a bit of a swing, right? It's very swingy. Like, if I was to pick who is my favourite out of Wissa and Schade, I'd definitely say Wissa. But Schade was close. However, you know, it could have been a very different day where Wissa scored, didn't get the yellow card, and you know what I mean. So, you know, we'll take those Schade points. All three of my strikers, though, unfortunately blanking. Mateta with a 1-pointer, Isak blanking, and Haaland blanking too. So all of my points coming from my defenders, well, basically my defenders and my midfielders. On the bench, I had Raya. Made a good decision there to bench Raya against Liverpool, start Areola against Man United. I think that proves that Man United now are definitely a team to target, you know, with them clearly targeting and prioritising the Europa League, not really going for it in the Premier League. West Ham beating them 2-0 at Old Trafford, for example. I think that kind of says it all, really. Jacob Murphy with an assist, 5 points on my bench. Would I have started him over Isak or Mateta? No. So, again, I'll take that on the chin, really. A 1-pointer for Saliba and 5 points for Konsa. And again, I could have started him, but again, I don't think I would have picked him over Mateta and Isak. So whilst I've got, what's that? You know, 2 players that have scored points on my bench, I don't think I'd make any different decisions in terms of who I started. So in some cases, poor outcomes on some of the moves I made, but in some cases, good outcomes. I think my 2 transfers, Salah to Schade and Marmoush to Haaland. Obviously, the captaincy call on Haaland didn't pay off, but moving Salah to Schade did. And I also felt there's only 2 game weeks left of the season to go. Well, when I made the move after game week 36 is all said and done, can Salah really hurt me that much in 2 game weeks? It's not like I'm moving Salah right for Haaland in the middle of the season and taking a punt. You know, I'm doing it with 2 game weeks left to go. When Liverpool, you know, I don't think you can say that they're completely on the beach, but they have won the league. You know, there's less motivation for them to play well. Anyway, so that's my team. 70 points up to 21k overall. All right, so here is how my team is lining up for game week 37 then. You can see, because there are only 2 game weeks left, usually the expected points below the players is filled out with 3 games, but because there's only 2 games left, one of them is hashed out. So you have to deal with that sort of interesting looking graphic. Here's how we're lining up at the moment then. So I've got Raya and Saliba, double Arsenal defence against Newcastle at home. I'm not sure. There's a question whether I go double Arsenal defence against Newcastle at home or double Man City defence against Bournemouth at home. Look, I have Guardiola and Diaz. I'll still probably have Raya in goal. But yeah, that's the question to ask. I think I've got to start Munoz against Wolves, regardless of what, you know, what comes out in that FA Cup final. I think Munoz is got to be in my team against Wolves. You know, he's probably, at least for this week, the best defender in the game. We'll talk about that in a second though. My midfield is probably going to be all of these, well, 3 cheapy sub 6 million midfielders. Mbumo, Sharda, Sarr and Rodgers. Quite happy with all of those, to be honest. I am, again, a little bit worried about Sarr and how the FA Cup might affect his minutes in the Premier League against Wolves. I'm tripled up on Crystal Palace, which does worry me a little bit. So perhaps I could maybe look to take one of those out to sort of reduce my minutes risk. I, of course, do have Murphy on my bench as well, and Diaz and Konsa, who are, you know, all decent options. Up front, I've got Haaland, who the armband is on at the moment, just for his expected points total. Again, he plays in the FA Cup final too, and to be fair, I was saying I was considering going double Man City defence. They play in the FA Cup final too, so I've got 6 players in my team that are in the FA Cup final, which is a little bit of a concern. So yeah, maybe I'm staring at a red arrow before the game week's even begun. Currently, the armband's on Haaland, just with that expected points total, but I might be looking to captain a player that I bring in. We'll talk about that in a second, though. Isak against Arsenal away. Massive on him in that game. And I'm also not massive on Mateta. Not been in the best of form recently. And he's probably playing in the FA Cup final, which might limit his minutes for Wolves. And he's got Liverpool on the final day. So, I know I've made that move for Haaland, but now I'm left with a team that doesn't fill me with all that much excitement. So, we'll look position by position, I think. And we'll talk about potential players that I could bring in. I don't think I'm going to change my goalkeeper, though. I'm just happy with Raya, so we'll look at the other 3 positions. So in terms of defenders then, what I've got here is expected points in total for the final 2 game weeks. Saliba top, Kivior second, Bradley and Virgil van Dijk, Guardiola and Konate up there as well. I've got 2 of those top defenders. I don't have any Liverpool defenders, and to be honest, I'm not too mad about that because I think they might see some rotation. Maybe not in game week 37, but we might see some big Liverpool rotation in game week 38. I just have a feeling that Slot completely changes the team because, you know, it's the final game of the season and the league's sort of wrapped up. Guardiola's in there, who obviously I have as well. Munoz, I would suggest he's probably just off that list. If we can actually add up his expected points. So Konate's on 8.2, and over the next 2 game weeks, yeah, Munoz is on what? 7.5, so he's pretty close. And I think particularly for game week 37, is a really good option. So I don't see a desperate need to change out any of my defenders, really. On to the midfielders. I am very worried about Salah. He's got Brighton and Crystal Palace as his last 2 fixtures. That does worry me. I don't have a way to bring him back in because I've only got 1 transfer. So I now have to, whilst it was easy to have no Mo Salah for the Arsenal game, it's not easy to not have Salah for the Brighton and Palace game. And I would imagine going into game week 37, he's probably going to be the most popular captain. Saka, who I like in particular for game week 38, not necessarily 37 against Newcastle, but he's got Southampton in 38. However, having seen how Southampton have just fared against Man City, they're still not, well, they are one of the worst teams in Premier League history. But, you know, they just to keep a clean sheet against Man City. Kevin De Bruyne, I'm just not sure about his minutes in 37 with the FA Cup final, and I'm already tripled up on Man City anyway. Cole Palmer, he could have been interesting for that Man United game, but I just don't think we've seen enough from him in performances recently to justify it. I was saying that if he had a good performance against Newcastle, you know, backing up the good performance he put in against Liverpool, that might really help his confidence and again make him a good option in FPL, but it just didn't turn out that way. So I just don't think I can go for him. Martinelli doesn't fill me with excitement, and I've already got Mbumo. So even on my midfield there, I'm not massively... Obviously, I'm scared of Salah, but I can't bring him in at this point because I've only got one move. So I'm scared of him, but I'm not seeing any midfielders there that I desperately want to buy. Forwards then, well, I've got Haaland. I've already got Isak. And I must say, despite him being right up there in terms of expected points, Arsenal away I don't think is a good fixture for Isak. Although maybe, I don't know, maybe he's going to play really well because he's on the shop front and Arsenal might look to sign him in the summer. Who knows? That could be a factor in that game, I suppose. An outside one. Cunha's up there. And then a player that I really like, I'm probably going to say is my most likely transfer in this week, is Ollie Watkins. He's got Tottenham and Man United in his final 2 games. Tottenham made 9 changes this weekend ahead of the Europa League final. That says where Ange's priorities are. And also, Ruben Amorim is making constant changes to the Man United team, showing where his priorities are. And that's Watkins' next 2 fixtures. Rashford is out injured. I don't think he's going to be back before... I don't believe he's back before the end of the season. So yeah, I think Watkins could be a really, really good transfer in. Numbers he's put up this season, not quite as good as they were last year. I think he got nearly sort of 35 attacking returns or something crazy last year. I think he got nearly 17 assists. So the assists have dropped down, but the number of goals he's put away is there or thereabouts where it was last season. And also, he's done that by playing less minutes because of Rashford taking some of them. You know, he's slightly overperformed his XG, but it's nothing to write home about, really. And I really, really love the Tottenham and Man United fixtures. And I just look at my team and I think, genuinely, there's a case to sell all 3 of my forwards, potentially. Mateta in the sense that well, he's not been playing all that well of recent. Crystal Palace are in the FA Cup final this weekend on Saturday. He could get rotated. I think he could be surplus to requirements. As could Isak. You know, that Arsenal away fixture is not good. But then, obviously, that Everton at home fixture on the final game week of the season is good. And I think Newcastle will be playing for something right up until the bitter end. Obviously, the same rule of that applies to Man City, playing for something right up until the bitter end. But they've got the FA Cup final this weekend. And I don't think Bournemouth is the best fixture. Although I do think Man City stand more chance of scoring against Bournemouth than they do against Southampton, who played like they did, as defensively as they did. I don't think Bournemouth are going to do that. So I could genuinely take any one of these forwards out for Watkins. Right now, my gut feel is take out Mateta. I have a feeling that Haaland still starts in game week 37 against Bournemouth. He just might not play the full 90 minutes. And it all depends on how the FA Cup final plays out, right? But unfortunately, the deadline is before the FA Cup final. So we're not going to get the news as to, you know, we're not going to know until the deadline has passed. So I think, and also I've got a bit of bench cover there. I've got Murphy, got Ruben Diaz, got Konsa. It's not ideal, but it's a bit of bench cover. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Konsa could keep a clean sheet against Tottenham, to be fair. Although, thinking about Tottenham and their rotation, could they maybe play a good team against Aston Villa to get their players good minutes, similarly to Man United, of course, who could, you know, there's a part of wanting to rest your players and save them from getting injured, but then there's also a part of getting them good minutes in Premier League football to keep their sharpness up. Yeah, bit of a debate, but if I were to make a transfer, I think I'd look to bring in Watkins. All right, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. I feel like the FPL content that I'm making over the last few weeks has gotten progressively shorter and shorter. There's only 2 game weeks left of the season to go, right? So there is a bit less to talk about. So the videos are shorter, you know, so I'm sorry there's a little bit less content for you than you might usually be used to, but I guess it's just the way the game's gone at the moment with it coming to an end. And also, I still don't know what I'm going to do with myself over the summer. Give me some ideas maybe of what I could get up to. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments, as always, what you think I should do with my team. I always say this, but I really appreciate people's different opinions. You know, if we all had the same opinion, all of our FPL teams would be the same and the game would be really boring. The only thing I ask is you're just respectful about it in the comments and polite. That's all I ask. And if you haven't already, you want to see more content from me, you can subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which I think should be just around here on your screen. So I was just looking up at the camera to see where it was on screen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.